Welcome to Art Ed Radio, the podcast for art teachers. This show is produced by the Art of Education University, and I'm your host, Tim Bogans. I've spent some time lately thinking about teachers who make the transition from being a classroom teacher to being an art teacher, and just all of the things that go along with that. And I think there are some interesting ties there that are worth exploring between classroom teachers and art teachers. And I think there's a lot we can learn from each other. You know, I've talked before on the podcast here about how being an art teacher on the cart and going into all different types of elementary classrooms really helped me as a teacher. You know, I could see how different classroom teachers would run things, would organize things, how they would deal with different situations. And it kind of helped me find my way on how I wanted to run my art room once I had my own. But what I'm talking about here, like what we're going to talk about today, is an entirely different perspective. Okay, this is going to be talking about fully shifting jobs. And I'm thinking about, you know, what it takes for someone to get your elementary education degree, do your training, do your professional development, you know, spend years with your own grade level classroom, and then make the shift to becoming an art teacher. You know, that has to be just a tectonic shift. And, you know, I don't think it's anything we've ever covered on the podcast before. But I wanted to do an episode on the topic, so I reached out to someone who's made that change, and we're going to speak to her today. Sonya Castro is a former classroom teacher, current art teacher in San Antonio. She runs the website Mija Teaches Art, where she shares a lot of things she is doing in her art room, and she's going to talk to us today about what it takes to move from the elementary classroom to the art room. I cannot wait to have her on. All right, Sonya Castro is joining me now. Sonya, how are you?
I am good. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. We are excited to have you here. To start with, you know, I love to have all of our new guests, especially give us an introduction. So can you tell us about yourself? And then since we're talking about transition from classroom to art room, can you talk about what you used to teach and then like what you're doing and where you're teaching now?
Sure. Well, I'm Sonya Castro. I am an elementary art teacher in San Antonio, Texas. I'm a third generation Mexican American raised here in San Antonio. So I love this city and being part of this community. I've taught second through fourth grade for about 11 years before transitioning into the art room, where I've been for 8 very, very good years.
Nice. I love to hear that. And like I said, I want to talk about that transition that you made and the hows, the whys, everything about it. So I guess my first question is like, what made you want to switch from an elementary classroom to the art room? Like, when did you first start thinking about that? When did you first start considering making the move?
Well, I always wanted to be a teacher, and being an art teacher would have been my first choice.
Okay.
After high school, I followed a college scholarship to a college that didn't have an art education program. So I ended up going into elementary education. And the district that I wanted to teach at, which is the same district my mom and her sisters taught at, they only had 2 elementary art teacher positions at that time. And so out of maybe like 50 elementary schools, really only 2 had art. And so I always thought like, well, those teachers are going to retire in those positions.
Right.
So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go get my elementary education degree, and hopefully something pops up along the way. So as I was teaching those 11 years, I always wanted more creativity in the classroom. I was teaching grades that had the state test, and so there was a lot of stress that came with those grades.
Right.
Um, and I was able to get my teaching certificate. So, since I already had my elementary ed certification, all I had to do was take the art certification test. So, I was
Hmm.
able to do that, and I was able to also get my master's in instructional technology. There was a special program with my district. And so I had always liked technology and art. And so those were two of my big interests. And I would try to incorporate that into the general ed classroom. Um,
Right.
but after 11 years, I kind of reached a breaking point where I just needed, I knew it was time to
Hmm.
try to look for that art teaching position. And even if it meant leaving my district, which I didn't want to do, I knew it was time.
Okay, and so like I guess I'm curious about what made you know like it was time to do that. And then like when you did make that change, like what was the hardest part about making the move? Like what did you struggle with? And I guess I'm throwing a lot of questions here at once, but on the flip side, like what was the easiest part or what was the most enjoyable part of moving into the art room?
Well, for my situation, it was unique in that I ended up in my 11th year teaching. I had a really difficult class, and I had
Hmm.
already just had my own children. So my youngest
Oh,
daughter
yeah.
was 1. And so I was reaching a point to where it was hard to give that same energy to, because then you
Hmm.
have your students that feel like your children also.
Hmm.
So it was hard to give that energy to my school children and then my children at home. So I was already getting stressed with that, but also I was overwhelmed with students in the classroom, um, struggling with always, not being able to give that correct answer and feeling
Yeah.
really bad about themselves. And them, I wanted to create a space where that right or wrong answer didn't exist. And I felt like
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
art room would be that place where they could really just be themselves and express themselves. And I felt like that was lacking. Um, because you're so overwhelmed in the general ed classroom with a very long to-do list. I
Yes.
was creating um, lesson materials for all the subjects: reading, writing, science, social
Hmm.
studies. It was just overwhelming. And I'm
Yeah.
a creative person by nature. At that time, I was involved with my community neighborhood association, creating flyers and the logo for that I just felt like I wasn't also using my talents that I had
Right.
in the classroom. And so I felt like I wasn't teaching my passions or talents and using that to help students.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, and I love hearing that. Just the idea that you should not be stifling that creativity, either your own or that of your students. And I think that's great. So, so let me ask you, as you're making that transition from general education to art, like what kind of training or professional development or preparation, like what kinds of things did you have to do to get ready before you started teaching art?
Well, luckily in the general ed classroom, you go to a lot of training. Um,
Yes.
I see that now as an art teacher, there's not too much training offered.
Hmm.
And so I didn't really have any art specific training as a teacher. My background, I had, high school art classes, college art
Right.
classes,
Right.
um, but I didn't have any specific training. So it was really jumping into a world that was, it was exciting, but it was also very scary because I wasn't really, it felt at times that I wasn't really sure where to go, like what direction
Hmm.
to go. And at that time, our district didn't have a visual arts coordinator. So when
Okay.
I first got that teaching position, teaching art, it was um, it was difficult because I was given so much freedom that I didn't know exactly where to go.
Yeah, it's tough to find those answers without a lot of support.
Yes. So it was hard. I think the hardest thing was also finding materials. I came to a school that didn't have an art teacher before. So I was really starting new.
Mm. Yeah.
And then having to manage like all the student art. And because I was used to having just third and fourth grade students, I was used to that level. I felt like third and fourth grade was my sweet spot. So
Hmm.
when the little kinder students came in, it was like, ah, I was very frazzled. But now it's one of my favorite grade levels. It's like now my mission has become, how do I keep that free kinder spirit alive all the way up, through
Right.
fifth grade?
Yeah. I like that a lot. I don't know. Kindergarten is a whole new world. Like that's really scary to just kind of go into without much experience. And yeah, I got to think too, just going from a classroom of 30 kids to a classroom of hundreds and hundreds of kids. Like that's got to be a whole different ball game for you there too.
Yes. But what was really fun about becoming an art teacher was being able to see all the students, like from kinder through fifth.
Yes.
Before I only had that one group of students, and that would, we would be like a family. But to be able
Hmm.
to build those relationships in kinder and see them grow all the
Yeah.
way to fifth has been really special. And then you go down the halls and everyone is just so happy to see you because
Yep. Yep.
you're the art teacher. You're pretty much like you're the favorite teacher on campus.
Yeah.
And it's that has been really enjoyable.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's fun to be a superstar where everybody knows you, everybody loves you. So yeah, that's good stuff. So I wanted to ask you though, like obviously that transition is tough. It sounded like you're just kind of thrown into the deep end with, not a lot of training, not a lot of guidance. But as you fight through that, I'm sure you get a little bit better each day, a little bit more comfortable each day. But like, how long did it take for you to really start feeling comfortable as an art teacher?
So when I became an art teacher, I think the first 3 years, I really focused on using art as a way to help students have a voice in their community because that's what I was seeing
Mm.
in my own life. I moved into, this neighborhood that we really were able to make changes in our community because of neighbors speaking out and speaking up. And that's not something I was raised with having that voice and making a difference in my
Hmm.
community. So
Hmm.
for me, because as an art teacher, you're kind of given more freedom um, to create your curriculum. I really focused on getting students to make that connection with their community through art.
Yeah.
And I was able to create these 3 community service projects that brought in almost like $20,000 into the art program.
Oh
So I
wow.
was
Yeah.
able to gain a lot of money through that to start building, my art classroom and buying the materials that I needed. And so
Mhm.
that helped a lot, those grants. I know with one grant and they were with through the Spurs organization. They don't have the
Okay.
grants anymore, but there's grants out there. And I was able to find some. And I know with one project, we had students visiting the family homeless shelter across the street from our school. And they hosted these nights where we had little stations in this room, and so families could go and do like a printmaking station or a sewing station, all these different stations. And so I was able to purchase materials for that, but also students were able to help others in their community while
Yeah.
also, learning these art skills. And even another project, it was they wrote anti-bullying skits and created puppet plays. So we did a lot of
Oh, cool.
sewing and they would perform these at different schools in our district. And so with these projects, we were able to, have a lot of fun, but also that helped purchase a lot of the materials that I
Hmm.
still have in my room.
I was gonna say that's a really great way
Yeah.
to kind of get the art program like up and running. That's an
Hmm.
amazing opportunity.
Yeah. And I'm really lucky that at my school we have a lot of campus collaboration. Um,
Hmm.
even today was a PD day, and this morning we were in two groups. One group, we were on these pathways. So teachers get to choose an area of kind of like action research for the year. And so
Okay.
mine is in AI, using AI to enhance student learning. And at the end of the year, like we will showcase what we have been able to learn and practice in the classroom. And then another group I had today during my PD was with this group that I've been seeing since like year one. So I've been here for 8
Okay.
years. And in this group, we have teachers from all subjects, all levels, and we each have a turn to like bring a dilemma or bring a unit or bring a lesson, bring student
Okay.
work. And we're able to use these protocols to give feedback and ideas on that. And
Oh,
so
nice.
because that we have a strong culture of collaboration, teacher development, and leadership, I think that has helped a lot in just reflecting on what I'm doing in the classroom and how I can, what else I can do to make sure students are really just not doing a fun art activity, but
Hmm.
really like doing some deep learning and reflection.
Yeah, absolutely. So that all sounds really, really cool. So I guess next, I would love for you to just kind of speak to people who are listening to this, maybe thinking about making that move into the art room, or they've done that recently. And, like, can you just share your experiences? I'm thinking about, like some of the things that you did or have continued to do that are helpful or worthwhile. Were there any stumbles, like things that you did or spent time on that you don't think were helpful or don't think were worth it, or things that you struggled with? Just like what advice would you give to people who are thinking about making this move or have done it recently?
I think if teachers have that gut feeling that the art classroom is where they want to be, I know that served me. I always had that, little voice in my mind that, oh,
Yeah.
I need to do something more creative,
Yep.
and I would say to follow it. That gut feeling has always helped me,
Yeah.
and so if you're wanting that, I would definitely recommend doing it. And I know it can be scary because sometimes you have to maybe leave a campus that you're really happy at
Hmm.
or kind of go into the unknown. And but luckily for me it paid off, and I think for others it would too. I would recommend looking for grants, donations. I'm lucky to be at a school with a lot of parents are helpful with donating items that could be used in the art class. um, but always looking for grants and opportunities like that, because there are a lot of people who want to give and help schools out.
Yeah.
What has really helped me is kind of forcing myself to be organized. I think maybe 2 years ago was the first time like I finally bought a watch, because I know it's been I am not a very organized person at all. My husband is the one who's always like the list maker and everything. And
Yep.
I've really, really now been in the classroom and having, like 400 students with their work all over the place. I've really had to make myself be more organized. And it's made such a difference. And
Hmm.
so I would say organization is really important. Sharing your work with other educators, just like I said, like even if you
Yeah,
think like there's a teacher who doesn't teach art, they still have a lot to offer. And
for
that's what
sure.
I've learned in that small group that I'm a part of, that any educator can offer a lot that could help you in your art room. Also, what I have found really helpful is using technology. All my lesson plans are on Google Slides. And
Hmm.
in the beginning, I didn't always title them because I was
Right.
rushing, and they would get lost in my long list of things in my Google Drive. But I've become more organized using technology, like a spreadsheet to record, and link in all my lessons. Um, And also, I don't do like single day lessons a lot, like maybe I used
Okay.
to in the beginning.
Yeah.
Um, I try to organize my lessons in unit to see like the big picture. And that's something that I've eventually developed to where like for me, kinder is working on making connections between art and nature. First grade is global cultures and art.
Hmm.
Second grade is children's literature. And then third grade is art history.
Okay.
And doing that, in the beginning, it was I would sometimes have everyone doing the same art lesson. And
Right.
I think in the
Right.
beginning, that's okay because none of them have had any of the lessons, so
Yes,
I think it's
exactly.
an easy way to kinda dip your toes in in, your art room, but eventually, as I saw the students growing and getting older from year to year, I saw that I had to build that vertical alignment by looking at what skills they needed for each level to be even more successful the next grade. And so
Hmm.
eventually, developing that curriculum really helps, but it does take time.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And also just having a growth mindset. I think there were a lot of times, and even now, I would say I feel really successful in the classroom, but I can have one class and feel like, "Oh my goodness, I'm rocking it." And then the next class can come in and I can feel like, "Oh my goodness, I'm the worst teacher," because each class is different and each year, is different. So just having that, giving yourself grace and having that growth mindset and thinking about, well, what didn't work with this grade and what can I do to make it better? I think that has really helped me. Um, Not helpful is not saving or naming any of your lessons that you do.
Oh, yeah.
Having
Yeah.
kind of organization to keep your lessons organized. um, Sometimes in the beginning, I felt like I was always creating lesson plans, and even my husband was like, "Didn't you taught all last year? Like, what?" I was like, "I know, but I'm just losing everything." So creating some kind of system to keep all those lessons that you're doing and creating,
Yeah.
and this next one, it's kind of helpful, but then not, is the one I mentioned about having, like, the same lessons for all grade levels. It's
Right.
good to start, and I would recommend starting that way, but then eventually you wanna make sure that your lessons are able to build. And that's a great thing about being an art teacher because as a general ed classroom teacher, you can't see what each level, like the developmental
Yes.
stages, and you
Yes.
really start understanding the student better. And so as an art teacher, I think we're lucky that we can see that, and you'll start seeing like what skills they need so that next year they're going to be even better at this part.
Hmm.
And that just gives the students more self-confidence, and you'll start seeing them growing in different ways. Um, I think also not helpful is, like I said, taking the tough days personally.
Right.
Um, it's I mean, who knows if it's the moon cycle or something, but sometimes, some classes are just really tough and they don't work out as you thought they would, but
Hmm.
think of it more as like, okay, what is something else I could do better?
Yeah, I think rather than just dwelling on those days, I think reflecting on those days is really worthwhile. And you can look at it as a learning experience, a learning opportunity rather than, a wasted day or something that you need to beat yourself up over. Just see
Mhm.
what you can learn from it and move on. And I know that's easier said than done, but I think it is important. So let me ask you to, I guess, just, I appreciate all of those insights, all of those kind of words of wisdom, but I guess just following up on that, like, what other advice would you have for people thinking about making the move? Like, going from general ed to the art classroom, is that a move that you would encourage other people to make?
I would definitely encourage people to make it. Um, I do think that there's a lot more inspiration on social media now than when I
Yes.
first started.
Yes.
Um, And I think it's good, but I think it could also become very overwhelming. So I
Mhm.
think you do need to be really cautious with making comparisons of like what other teachers are showing. I think it's important for for teachers to really teach using their passions and what they
Yeah.
like. Like for
Mhm.
me, I really love nature. And so that's why I'm trying to incorporate that with Kinder. I
Yeah.
really enjoy, you know, learning about different cultures, and that is tied in with the standards, but I think it's important to help students become, global citizens and see us as a global family. And children's literature, I love, children's illustrations, and so that's a great way for that second grade year to also start working on figure drawing and helping them draw, because that's where they start really getting interested in that. And if that's not, if we don't encourage that, by the time they're fourth and fifth, that's when their self-esteem can get really, you know,
Mhm.
it can get hard for them.
Yeah.
Um, and then with third grade, I felt like they were really ready to dive into that art history and make those connections. And with what I've seen, they've really connected with the curriculum that I'm developing, and it's been really exciting. So I think just like build your curriculum step by step using what your talents are and what
Mhm.
your passions are, because then they get more excited when they see us passionate, and then that's when I like to say I think the magic happens, because they're excited and they can bring themselves into the lesson. And I think the biggest thing, like why I went into art education, is because of that individual creativity that I feel like we all have, and that
Yeah.
was my main focus in the beginning also. I wanted to do, fun art lessons, be creative, bring out the beautiful colors and all the fun stuff. But I wanted the students to really understand how special and unique they each are. I
Mhm.
really feel that, whatever drawing they bring in, like that's the only one in the universe like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really special. And when they're able to see that, they don't have to copy others. They certainly don't have to, whenever I demonstrate anything, I always make sure it's either very basic or ugly, and they can do 1,000 times better. And they let me know too that they can do better because I always put something very simple looking, but that they have so much to offer, and that creativity is for me is why I'm in the art room. And I see them making that connection, especially when we get new students to our
Yeah.
school, and
Yeah.
I can see the ones who get into what I call the artist zone. So in my class, I like to try to tell students like that artist zone is when, it's kind of like reading a good book. When you're in that book and everything around you just disappears and you don't hear anything because you're so immersed in that book. And
Mhm.
that's a lot what happens when you're making art. You're in the zone, you don't know what's happening around you, and you get all these ideas that kind of come to you, and you're in this, this state of like flow. And that's always kind of what our goal is in the art room, to kind of get to that stage. And it's really nice to see, like when we wrap up a unit and have students share their art, I make sure students see, like, this isn't, look at this student's work. This isn't something that I could have told them to make. This isn't
Right.
something that they copied from me. This came from them. And
Mhm.
that's what happens when you get into the artist zone. You are able to bring something so that everyone can see, and that's really special.
Yeah, that
So that
is.
has always been a big focus.
No, I love that so much. You explain it, you say it all so well. So yeah, I love that. I guess last question for you before we go. Can you tell us a little bit about your website? That was the first place I saw a lot of the cool things that you're doing. I know you're sharing a lot of ideas there, but can you talk about why that's important to you? What kinds of things you are sharing there, and where people can find it?
Yeah, well, I started a website called Mija Teaches Art. And Mija in Spanish means like darling, and it's something
Hmm.
my mom and my grandma always called me.
Yeah.
Um, growing up, and I feel like when I'm in the art room, I'm that girl again that fell in love with like Lisa Frank art and just like totally in love with just drawing and, Bob Ross. And it's it's just it so anyways, I named my website that. And I was also encouraged by my administrator to share what I was doing. She found that I was doing some really effective things in the classroom, and
Hmm.
I've always wanted to eventually share what I've been working on. And with her encouragement, I decided to go ahead and do it. And it's also a way to hold myself accountable. I'm
Yeah.
sharing some of my finished, units and lessons, and anything that could help other teachers organize their lessons will just help them become more effective, and that's going to help, all the students. And so those are some things. I still plan to add more, so it's check out mihateachesart.com, and
Perfect.
I hope teachers can get something out of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff there, and like you said, a lot to look forward to. But Sonya, thank you so much for taking the time today to come chat with me. I've really enjoyed this conversation and really appreciate everything you were doing in your art room. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to Sonya. I loved all of that conversation. I loved all of her insights, and I appreciate her sharing her story with us. Now, if you are another art teacher who has made that transition from the classroom to the art room, I would love to hear from you as well. Please email me, timothybogans@theartofeducation.edu, if you're willing to share just any part of your story, why you moved to being an art teacher, how it's going for you, what's better, what's worse, anything at all. I would love to hear about it. I would love to hear more perspective. So, this may be a topic that's worth diving into a little bit more sometime. But until then, another big thank you to Sonya. Make sure you check out the Miha Teaches Art website, and we'll talk to everyone here again soon. Art Ed Radio is produced by the Art of Education University with audio engineering from Michael Crocker. Thank you, as always, for listening. We have another mailbag episode coming with Amanda in a couple of weeks. So if you have any mailbag questions at all, please send them along. Email me or email podcast@theartofeducation.edu, or look for Amanda on Instagram this week. She'll be putting up a question box, giving you the voicemail number, whatever else she may want to do. So if you have any questions for us, please send them our way, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can in the episode at the very first part of November. All right. Thank you all.